The emergency room was bustling as usual. Among the patients, a young stranger named Michael, only 20 years old, was brought in by a paramedic, with visible injuries and a downcast expression. Most of the nurses looked at him with disdain, murmuring about another lost cause. However, Ryan, a kind-hearted nurse, decided to take care of the young man. Ignoring the comments and accusatory looks, he approached with empathy. While others avoided him, Ryan carefully cleaned Michael's wounds. "It'll be all right, kid," he said with an encouraging smile, trying to convey reassurance. Michael, with tired eyes, merely mumbled a timid thank you. It was evident that the young man was used to being treated like an outcast. However, Ryan saw beyond appearances and noticed the fragility of a human being in distress. The murmurs continued in the corridors. One of the older nurses commented loudly, "He should be taken straight to the police station, not the hospital." Ryan, however, remained unfazed. "Everyone deserves a chance to recover," he responded calmly. His determination to help Michael was clear, and he was willing to face the disapproval of his colleagues to fulfill his duty of care. Ryan stayed by Michael's side throughout the triage process. Between routine questions, he tried to bond with the young man, even though the answers might be hard to hear. Michael, initially reluctant, began to lower his guard. "I'm not a monster," he said, almost in a whisper, his eyes filled with suppressed pain. Ryan nodded, showing that he was there to listen without judgment. Gradually, Michael's defensive posture began to fade. He started talking about his struggles, though vaguely. Sensing the progress, Ryan offered a listening ear and a friendly shoulder. "I know it's not easy," he said, "but we can find a way out." Ryan's tone was comforting, something Michael hadn't heard in a long time. That conversation planted the seed of possible change. Hours passed, and Ryan refused to leave Michael alone. The hospital supervisor, noticing Ryan's attitude, approached with an inquisitive look. "Ryan, you know we can't get too involved," she warned. But Ryan, determined, replied, "He needs help, not more rejection." His words were firm, and his empathy unwavering. He was determined to make a difference, regardless of the consequences. Michael watched everything in silence, surprised by Ryan's dedication. He had never encountered someone so willing to help without asking for anything in return. The nurse's attention and care began to break the hard shell Michael had built over the years. For the first time in a long time, he felt treated as a person and not as a lost cause. It was a turning point, even if he didn't fully realize it. At the end of the shift, Ryan said goodbye, but not without ensuring that Michael would be well taken care of during the night. "I'll be back tomorrow, and we'll see what we can do for you," he promised. Michael just nodded, but there was a spark of hope in his eyes. A small light at the end of the tunnel began to shine. From then on, a new journey began, full of uncertainties, but with the promise of possible redemption. Ryan, always curious and concerned, decided to investigate Michael's past to better understand his situation. He knew the young man had faced tough times, but he couldn't imagine the depth of the problems he would uncover. By talking to some contacts and accessing medical and police records, he discovered that Michael had a history of drug addiction and involvement with crime. It was a dark path that culminated in an attempted murder, which nearly took his life. One afternoon, during one of the many post-operative care sessions, Ryan sat down next to Michael and gently started asking questions. "I know your life hasn't been easy," he said softly, "but I want to understand what happened." Michael hesitated but decided to open his heart. He talked about how the addiction began, a desperate attempt to escape an unbearable reality. "I lost everything, even my family's support," he confessed, his voice laden with pain. Ryan listened attentively without interruptions. Michael spoke about the dark days he spent on the streets, how he got involved with the wrong people, and sank even deeper into drugs. "It was like every day I dug myself deeper," he said, looking at his hands, "and I couldn't get out." He admitted to making bad choices, but also spoke about how he felt the world had abandoned him. This sense of loneliness, according to Michael, was what pushed him to the edge. Michael's story was marked by losses and disappointments. He recalled a specific episode when he tried to ask his family for help but was rejected. "My mother said I was a disgrace," he recounted with teary eyes. It was at that moment he realized he was truly alone. Ryan felt a pang in his heart upon hearing these words. It was clear that Michael was not just a victim of circumstances but also of his own actions and decisions. Despite everything, there was a glimmer of hope in Michael's words. He mentioned moments when he tried to get up but always ended up relapsing. "I wanted to change, but it felt like the universe was against me," he said with a bitter smile. Ryan took the opportunity to talk about rehabilitation and how the process, though difficult, was possible. "You don't have to fight alone," he affirmed, trying to offer a more positive perspective. The conversations between Ryan and Michael became a routine. Ryan believed that to truly help someone, it was necessary to understand their past and their pains. He didn't see Michael just as a patient, but as a human being who needed a second chance. "You have potential, Michael," he often said. And despite initial skepticism, Michael began to believe that maybe, just maybe, he could start over. There were moments of tension, of course. Ryan knew he was dealing with a deeply wounded and distrustful person. Sometimes, Michael would shut down and refuse to speak, sinking into a dark silence. During these times, Ryan would just stay by his side, offering a silent and supportive presence. "I'm here for you," he repeated, hoping his words would break through the barriers Michael had built around himself. However, the fact that Michael was opening up was a positive sign. He was no longer completely closed off to the world. Ryan felt that he was beginning to earn his trust, and this encouraged him to continue. But the road was still long and full of challenges. Even so, they both knew that, for the first time in a long time, there was a light at the end of the tunnel. And that light, however small, was the beginning of a possible redemption. Michael's situation at the hospital was becoming unsustainable. With the pressure mounting, Ryan's supervisor suggested that it was time to involve the police, given the circumstances and Michael's criminal past. However, Ryan was determined to continue caring for him. "He still needs medical help," he argued, facing the disapproval of his colleagues. He knew that Michael still needed time to recover physically and emotionally. Days passed, and Ryan stood firm in his decision. He knew he was risking his position at the hospital, but his empathy spoke louder. "Everyone deserves a second chance," he repeated to himself, trying to justify his stance. His colleagues, on the other hand, were growing increasingly impatient. "You're taking too much of a risk," a close friend warned. But Ryan, stubborn, refused to give up on Michael. The situation reached a critical point when the supervisor called Ryan in for a meeting. "We need to follow protocols," she insisted, looking him directly in the eyes. Ryan took a deep breath and, in a calm but firm tone, explained that Michael was not in a condition to face the legal system at that moment. "If we turn him over now, he may not survive," he asserted, feeling the weight of his words. He knew that Michael's future was in his hands. Meanwhile, Michael, sensing the conflict around him, began to feel guilty. "I don't want to cause more problems," he said to Ryan in a moment of vulnerability. But Ryan reassured him, promising to do whatever he could to protect him. "You're not a problem, Michael. You're a person who needs help," he declared with conviction. Ryan's attitude made Michael feel valued and less like a burden. The tension in the hospital was rising. Some nurses began to treat Ryan coldly, questioning his priorities. But he remained resolute. "I'm doing what's right," he repeated to himself, like a mantra. The internal struggle between following the rules and doing what he considered morally right was constant. However, Ryan didn't let it get him down, staying focused on Michael's well-being. In one of the meetings with the supervisor, Ryan presented a care plan for Michael, proposing a more humane and less punitive approach. "We need to consider his mental and emotional health," he argued. Despite the criticism, he managed to convince the administration to allow Michael to stay at the hospital for a while longer to fully recover. It was a small but significant victory. Michael, in turn, began to realize how much Ryan was investing in his recovery. He felt grateful and, for the first time, began to envision a different future. "I don't know how to thank you," he said emotionally during a conversation with Ryan. The nurse just smiled and replied, "Thank yourself for having the courage to change." Those words stayed with Michael, giving him the strength to move forward. Thus, despite the adversities and opposing opinions, Ryan continued steadfast in his mission. He knew that Michael's road to recovery would be long and full of challenges, but he was willing to face each obstacle alongside him. Ryan's support was like an anchor for Michael, something he had never experienced before. With each passing day, Ryan's determination became more evident, and the hope for a new life for Michael grew. After weeks of recovery, Michael was finally discharged from the hospital. Still concerned about Michael's well-being, Ryan offered him a place to stay at his house until he could get back on his feet. The offer was met with hesitation from Michael, who felt like a burden. "I don't want to be a bother anymore," he said in a low voice. However, Ryan insisted, stating that it was just a matter of care and friendship. Over time, Michael relented and accepted the invitation. Upon arriving at Ryan's house, Michael felt a mix of relief and discomfort. It was the first time in years that he had a safe place to call home, even if only temporarily. The house was simple but cozy, and Ryan made sure to show him around, ensuring that Michael felt comfortable. "Here, you can relax and focus on your recovery," Ryan said as he helped Michael settle in. The words were comforting, but Michael knew the journey was just beginning. The first few days were challenging. Michael struggled to adjust to the new routine, away from the streets and negative influences. Ryan encouraged him to keep a regular schedule for meals and rest and helped with simple tasks to keep him occupied. "It's important to keep your mind busy," Ryan explained patiently. Although Michael was grateful, he felt the weight of the change. The looks and comments from the neighbors didn't help either. Many didn't understand Michael's presence there. Some neighbors, suspicious, began to comment on the bad company Ryan had brought home. One neighbor, in particular, made sure to express her concern. "You know who he is, right?" she asked, her voice full of distrust. Ryan, with a calm smile, simply replied, "Yes, and I also know who he can become." The response was direct and clear, leaving the woman speechless. It was a defense of Michael, but also a reminder of Ryan's commitment to change. Ryan knew that facing public opinion would be a challenge. Even so, he remained undeterred. "People will talk, no matter what you do," he commented one evening during dinner with Michael. The young man, pushing his food around, just nodded. He was used to others' judgment, but Ryan's defense was something new and unexpected. "Thank you for believing in me," Michael said sincerely. Ryan smiled and replied, "I'm just doing what's right." As time went on, Michael began to open up more. He and Ryan started talking about various topics, from everyday trivialities to the dreams Michael once had. "I wanted to be a mechanic," he revealed, with a sparkle in his eyes. Ryan saw a glimmer of hope and began encouraging him to pursue that dream. "Maybe it's time to start thinking about the future," he suggested. Michael, still cautious, started to consider the possibility. The weeks passed, and Michael began to feel more confident. Ryan, always by his side, encouraged him to achieve small daily victories. "Today you did something amazing," he would say, even when Michael completed a simple household chore. These small gestures of encouragement helped Michael regain some of his self-esteem. Gradually, he began to believe there might be a way back, a chance to rebuild his life. However, not everything was easy. There were days when the weight of the past fell on Michael like a shadow. Ryan was always there to offer support and understanding. "I know it's hard, but you're not alone," he would say with firmness and affection. These words, though simple, were powerful for Michael, who felt increasingly empowered to face the challenges ahead. Together, they were beginning to build a new story, a story of hope and new beginnings. One afternoon, when everything seemed to be settling down, an unexpected visitor knocked on Ryan's door. Michael was in the living room, and when he opened the door, he was met by a man with an intense gaze and rigid posture. "I'm David," said the visitor, trying to maintain his composure. Michael, initially stunned, soon recognized his older brother. "David?" he murmured, as if confirming to himself. The shock was evident in both, and the ensuing silence was heavy and laden with emotion. Ryan, sensing the tension, tried to break the ice. "Please come in," he invited, gesturing to the living room. David entered, his eyes scanning the room before fixing on Michael. "It's been a long time," he said, with a mixture of relief and sadness. Michael, still trying to process the situation, just nodded. They sat on the couch, silence reigning between them. Ryan, feeling the need to steer the conversation, asked, "What brings you here, David?" David took a deep breath before responding. "I came to find my brother," he said, his voice heavy with emotions. "Since our father died, things have fallen apart," he continued, struggling to keep his composure. Michael, with a defiant look, finally broke the silence. "And you left me behind," he accused, his voice trembling. David lowered his head, unable to meet his brother's eyes. "I know," he replied, his voice barely a whisper. "I was weak. I thought I was helping by staying away." The atmosphere was thick with tension and hurt. "You have no idea what I've been through," Michael said bitterly. David looked at him, his eyes filled with regret. "I tried, Michael. I swear I tried. But I was lost too," he admitted, his voice choked with emotion. Ryan, watching the exchange, felt the need to intervene. "The past can't be changed, but you have a chance to start over," he said calmly. David straightened up on the couch, his eyes fixed on Michael's. "I want to make things right," he declared, his voice more resolute. Michael, for a moment, seemed to consider his words. "Why now?" he asked, distrust evident in his voice. David sighed. "Because I realized how much you mean to me. I don't want to waste any more time." Ryan observed the conversation closely, noticing the sincerity in David's words. Michael remained silent for a moment before finally responding. "I don't know if I can trust you," he admitted, his voice soft. David nodded, understanding the distrust. "I understand," he said sincerely, "but I'm here to prove that I've changed." Michael, still hesitant, finally broke eye contact. "It won't be easy," he murmured, looking at the floor. Ryan, noticing Michael's openness, intervened with an encouraging tone. "You have a chance to start over, one step at a time." The silence that followed was laden with emotion. Finally, David extended his hand to his brother. "Let's at least try," he suggested with a hopeful look. Michael looked at the extended hand, hesitating for a moment before taking it. "Okay," he replied, his voice firm but still uncertain. It was a small gesture, but for both it represented a big step. Ryan, watching the scene, felt a wave of relief and hope. With the tension easing, the three began to talk about the future. "I want to be here for you," said David with a serious expression. "I want to be the brother you deserve." Michael, still cautious, nodded. "We'll see," he said with a half-smile. Ryan, pleased with the progress, concluded the conversation with an optimistic remark. "The important thing is that you're willing to try," he affirmed. It was a new beginning, full of challenges but also possibilities for healing and reconciliation. After the initial reunion, David began visiting Ryan's house more frequently. During one of these visits, he and Michael sat down for a deeper conversation about the past. "I've always wanted to know why you left me," Michael said, his voice firm but filled with resentment. David sighed deeply, knowing he would have to face this question. "It wasn't easy for me either, Michael," he began, his voice tinged with remorse. David explained that after their father's death, he felt responsible for keeping the family together but ended up overwhelmed. "I was lost," he confessed, looking at the floor. "I didn't know how to deal with the pain, and I was cowardly in running away from my responsibilities." Michael listened intently, his hands clenched into fists. "You didn't try. You just gave up on me?" he replied, the anger evident in his words. David looked up, meeting his brother's eyes. "I know I messed up, but I'm here now," he affirmed, his voice full of determination. The atmosphere grew tense. Feeling betrayed, Michael asked another question. "Did you really think running away would solve everything?" David shook his head, clearly struggling with his emotions. "I was young and stupid," I thought distancing myself could help me start over. But I only ended up losing the only family I had left, he admitted. His voice choked. Ryan, who was sitting beside them, gently intervened. We all make mistakes. What matters is what we do after, he commented, trying to calm the situation. David then spoke about the difficulties he faced over the years, how guilt had eaten away at him. I hated myself for so long for leaving you, he said, his eyes brimming with tears. Michael, still wrestling with his feelings, asked, Why didn't you come back sooner? David hesitated before answering honestly. I was afraid that you wouldn't want me in your life anymore, he revealed. The confession took Michael by surprise. I just wanted someone who cared, he murmured, his voice barely audible. The silence that followed was heavy but also full of potential for healing. David finally broke the silence. I want to make up for lost time, he said, his voice firm. I can't change the past, but I can be here now. Michael looked at him, still uncertain, but something inside him began to soften. I don't know if I can forgive you completely, he admitted, his voice sincere. David nodded, understanding his brother's difficulty. I understand. I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I just want a chance, he replied with a hopeful look. Ryan, sensing it was the right moment, suggested a small activity to bring them closer. How about you two go out together, just the two of you? Maybe a walk or something, he proposed. The brothers exchanged glances, and David was the first to agree. I'd love that, he said with a small smile. Michael hesitated but eventually relented. All right, we can try, he responded, still cautious but willing to give his brother a chance. It was a small but significant step in rebuilding their relationship. Thus, they decided to start getting to know each other again, gradually leaving the past hurts behind. David promised to stand by Michael, supporting him in his recovery and rehabilitation. We'll do this together, he said with conviction. Michael, for the first time in a long while, felt a spark of hope. Maybe we can, he murmured with a small smile. The road ahead was still uncertain, but both were willing to face it, united by the desire to rebuild their family bonds. The days passed, and the attempts at reconciliation between Michael and David continued, but not without challenges. During a heated conversation, tensions reached a peak. You can't just show up and expect everything to be fine, Michael said, abruptly standing up from his chair. I know, but I'm trying, David replied, frustrated. Ryan, who was present in the room, sensed that things were about to get out of hand. Guys, let's take a moment to breathe, he suggested calmly. Ryan had always been a moderating presence, and at this moment, his intervention was crucial. You both have a lot of open wounds. You need to be patient with each other, he said, looking from one to the other. Michael, still agitated, retorted, It's easy to say when you haven't been through what I've been through. Ryan nodded, understanding Michael's pain. You're right, but we also can't forget that David is trying, he replied, maintaining a serene tone. David, feeling helpless, sighed and said, I don't know what to do anymore. It feels like every step I take, I mess up. Ryan looked at him with empathy. It's not easy to rebuild bonds, especially when there's so much resentment involved, he commented. But the fact that you're here trying is already a big step. Michael looked at Ryan, feeling a mix of anger and understanding. I just don't want to get hurt again, he confessed, his voice trembling. Ryan approached and placed a hand on Michael's shoulder. And no one wants that to happen. But you need to give it a chance, at least to heal. The atmosphere calmed down after Ryan's intervention. He knew he needed to help the brothers find common ground. Let's focus on the present. The past can't be changed, but you have the chance to create new memories, he suggested, trying to lighten the burden of painful memories. David, agreeing, turned to Michael. I want you to know that I'm here, willing to do whatever it takes, he said sincerely. Michael, still hesitant, just nodded. Ryan, seeing that both were trying, suggested a joint activity. How about we start with something simple? Maybe a meal together, he proposed. David smiled, excited by the idea. I can cook something, he offered. Michael, still reluctant, replied with a shy smile. Okay, but nothing too fancy, he joked, trying to lighten the mood. It was a small step, but it symbolized an opening for healing. During dinner, Ryan continued to mediate the conversation, ensuring there were no awkward silences or overly sensitive topics. So, David, tell us more about what you've been up to, he asked, trying to keep the tone light. David talked about his job and how he had tried to keep himself busy, while Michael listened attentively. It seems like you've found a path, Michael commented, with a hint of envy. David smiled and replied, I'm trying, but there's still a lot to be done. Ryan watched, pleased with the progress, even if it was slow. As the night went on, the conversation became more relaxed. Michael began sharing some funny childhood stories, and even David let out a few laughs. Ryan, satisfied, saw it as a sign of hope. Look, you two are already laughing together, he noted jokingly. Both brothers looked at him, surprised but pleased. It was a small glimpse of what could be a more united future. Ryan, happy with the outcome, ended the night with an encouraging message. Let's keep going like this, one step at a time. As time passed, Michael began to feel more comfortable at Ryan's house. The tensions with David eased, and the conversations became friendlier. One afternoon, David came with a proposal. Michael, I wanted to talk about something important, he began, a bit nervously. Michael, intrigued, nodded. David continued, I'm thinking about renting an apartment and wanted to know if you'd like to live with me. The proposal was direct and caught Michael by surprise. Michael was silent for a few moments, processing the offer. I don't know, David, he finally replied. I'm starting to feel good here with Ryan. David, trying to understand, asked, but what if we had our own space? We could start over, just the two of us. Michael looked at Ryan, seeking some guidance. Ryan, sensing the delicate situation, calmly intervened. This is an important decision, Michael. What do you really want? The silence that followed was heavy. Michael was clearly torn. I appreciate what you're trying to do, David, but I like being here, he finally said. Ryan, feeling the need to clarify, explained, Michael has made great progress here. Sometimes the right environment can make all the difference. David, though disappointed, understood. I see, he said with a tone of resignation. But know that I'm here for you always. Michael's decision became clearer over the following days. He realized that, although he still had a long way to go, he felt safe and supported at Ryan's house. I feel like I can grow here, he explained to David in a later conversation. With you, I'm afraid of falling back into old habits. David, though saddened, accepted his brother's decision. If that's what you think is best, I respect that, he said with a small smile. But I won't disappear. I'll be around. Ryan, who had witnessed the entire process, was pleased with Michael's maturity in making the decision. You're choosing what's best for you right now, he said in a private conversation. That shows how much you've grown. Michael, emotional, thanked Ryan for all the support. I don't know what I would have done without you, he admitted sincerely. Ryan just smiled and replied, We're all in this together. That's the true definition of family. David, keeping his promise, stayed close, offering financial and emotional support whenever possible. I know we're not living together, but I want to help in any way I can, he said during a visit. Michael accepted the help with gratitude, but also with a renewed sense of independence. I'm going to work to support myself, but any help is welcome, he responded, with a tone of determination. It was a new beginning with a redefined family dynamic. The three continued to meet regularly, strengthening their bonds. Ryan, always present, became a sort of mediator and counselor, helping them navigate the complex emotions involved. I think we're all learning a lot together, he commented during a shared meal. Michael and David agreed, realizing how much they had evolved since the beginning of the journey. We still have a lot to learn and fix, Michael said with a hopeful smile. But we're on the right track. Thus, even without living together, Michael, David, and Ryan managed to create a new form of family, based on respect, understanding, and mutual support. Michael continued to live with Ryan, focused on his recovery and the future. "I'm happy to have found a home," he said one day, looking at Ryan. "And I know that with you by my side, I can face anything." Ryan just smiled, pleased with Michael's progress and the strengthening of the bonds they had built. It was the beginning of a new phase for everyone. One quiet morning, as Ryan and Michael were having coffee, the doorbell rang unexpectedly. Ryan went to answer and, to his surprise, it was Mr. Johnson, one of the oldest neighbors on the street. He had a serious expression and seemed uneasy. "May I come in?" he asked in a firm voice. Ryan, always polite, invited him in. Michael, seeing him, became tense. He had heard about the unkind comments Mr. Johnson had made about him. Seated in the living room, Mr. Johnson got straight to the point. "I heard that you are Michael," he began, looking directly at the young man. "The same one who had trouble with the police?" Michael swallowed hard, feeling exposed. "Yes, that's me," he replied, trying to keep his composure. Mr. Johnson sighed and continued, "I made a mistake. I was quick to judge you without knowing your story." He paused, as if searching for the right words. Ryan, sensing the tension in the air, gently intervened. "We all make mistakes, Mr. Johnson. The important thing is to recognize and try to change," he said encouragingly. Mr. Johnson nodded, seeming a bit more relaxed. "That's why I'm here," he confessed, looking at Michael again. "I want to apologize for what I said about you. I know it doesn't change the past, but I want to make amends." Michael, surprised by the sincerity, didn't know how to react immediately. He looked at Ryan, who gave him an encouraging smile. "Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I've also made many mistakes, but I'm trying to change," Michael said calmly. Mr. Johnson seemed relieved. "I respect that, kid. It takes courage to admit and face your mistakes," he replied with a slight smile. The atmosphere began to lighten, with the initial tension dissipating. Ryan, wanting to reinforce the new dynamic, suggested, "How about we have some coffee together? It's a good opportunity to talk more." Mr. Johnson agreed, and they headed to the kitchen. While preparing the coffee, Mr. Johnson shared a bit about his life. "I've also been through tough times," he revealed, surprising everyone. "I lost my son to drugs, and maybe that's why I was so hard on you, Michael." His words deeply touched everyone in the room. Michael, feeling an unexpected connection, shared a little more of his story. "I've also lost important people because of my choices," he said with a distant look. "But I'm trying to start over." Mr. Johnson, with an empathetic expression, nodded. "Life is full of second chances, kid. And it looks like you've found people willing to help," he said, looking at Ryan. Ryan smiled and replied, "Everyone deserves a second chance, don't they?" With the atmosphere more friendly, they continued talking, discovering common interests and sharing stories. Mr. Johnson seemed genuinely interested in getting to know Michael and understanding his journey. "You're stronger than you think," he said at the end of the visit. "And if you need anything, I'm around." Michael, touched by the gesture, sincerely thanked him. "Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Your understanding means a lot to me," he replied with a genuine smile. Mr. Johnson's visit marked a turning point in Michael's life. It was a lesson that people can change and that forgiveness is possible. Ryan, always optimistic, saw it as a sign that they were on the right path. "You're finding your place in the community, Michael," he commented after the neighbor left. Michael smiled, feeling accepted for the first time in a long time. "I'm lucky to have you and David by my side," he replied. With each passing day, Michael's new life felt more real and full of possibilities. After months of living together and receiving unconditional support, Michael finally felt ready to take a big step, leaving Ryan's house and starting his life independently. The decision came after a long conversation with Ryan and David. "I think I'm ready to try it on my own," Michael said with a shy but confident smile. Ryan and David exchanged satisfied glances. "We're proud of you," Ryan responded, placing a reassuring hand on Michael's shoulder. David nodded in agreement. Finding a new home wasn't easy. Michael wanted a place that represented a fresh start but was also affordable. "I need something simple, but that I can call my own," he commented while looking at apartment listings. Ryan and David helped with the search, always respecting Michael's choices. "The important thing is that you feel comfortable," David said during a visit to a small apartment. Michael looked around, imagining himself there. "Yes, I think this could be the place," he said, smiling. Finally, the moving day arrived. Ryan and David helped Michael pack his things. "I can't believe I'm going to live on my own," Michael said, with a tone of nervousness mixed with excitement. Ryan laughed and replied, "It's a big step, but you're ready." David, carrying a box to the car, added, "And don't forget, we're always nearby." The atmosphere was joyful and anxious, with everyone knowing how significant this moment was. When they arrived at the new apartment, Michael looked at the empty space with mixed feelings. "So this is it," he said, letting out a sigh. Ryan smiled, watching his friend's reaction. "It's the start of something new," he replied, while placing a box on the floor. David, holding a housewarming gift, joked, "We hope you like the coffee maker. It's the least we can do to help you wake up early." Michael laughed, appreciating the humor. "You guys are the best," he said sincerely. The first few days were challenging. Michael faced the silence of the new home and the responsibility of supporting himself. "It's strange not having anyone around," he confessed to Ryan during a call. Ryan, always encouraging, replied, "That's part of the process. Remember, you're capable." Michael nodded, grateful for the support. He knew this loneliness was temporary and part of his personal growth. Michael dedicated himself to job hunting, determined to stabilize his life. After several interviews, he finally found an opportunity at a motorcycle repair shop. "It feels like the universe is giving me a chance," he told Ryan excitedly. "We always knew you could do it," Ryan responded, proud. Michael felt accomplished. The shop wasn't just a job. It was an opportunity to learn and grow. "I'll do my best," he promised himself. The first days at work were challenging, but Michael adapted quickly. He learned to handle the tools and started getting along with his colleagues. "You've got a knack for this," his boss commented, impressed with Michael's dedication. "Thank you," he replied, feeling valued. Each day, Michael felt more confident in his new routine. The job not only provided him with sustenance but also a sense of purpose. Over time, Michael began to feel at home. The empty apartment gradually filled with small decorations and memories of important moments. "I finally feel like this is my place," he told Ryan during a visit. Ryan smiled, happy for his friend's progress. "You're building a new life, Michael," he remarked with pride. Michael knew the journey would still be long, but with the support of Ryan and David, he felt ready to face any challenge. Michael's routine was finally stabilizing. He had been working at the motorcycle repair shop for a few weeks and felt increasingly confident. However, on an otherwise ordinary morning, everything changed. While at work, Michael began to feel a sharp pain in his chest, followed by a sensation of dizziness. He tried to ignore it, thinking it was just fatigue, but the pain only worsened. "Are you okay?" a concerned coworker asked. Michael tried to respond, but his voice failed him. Then he passed out. The boss, alarmed, immediately called an ambulance. "Stay calm. Help is on the way," he said, trying to reassure the other employees who watched the scene with concern. Ryan, who was in a work meeting, received an urgent call from the hospital. "It's about Michael," the nurse informed. Without hesitation, Ryan hurried out, his heart heavy with worry. When he arrived at the hospital, he found David already there, visibly shaken. The doctors rushed to stabilize Michael, who was unconscious. "He had a severe complication," the doctor explained. "We need to run more tests to understand the cause." Ryan and David waited anxiously in the waiting room, the silence between them filled with tension. Finally, the doctor returned with news. "Michael has a serious heart condition. We need to keep him under observation and start immediate treatment," he informed with a grave look. Ryan and David exchanged worried glances, both concerned about what would come next. When Michael finally woke up, he felt weak and disoriented. Looking around, he saw Ryan and David by his side. "What happened?" he asked in a faint voice. Ryan took his hand and carefully explained the situation. "You had a heart complication. The doctors are taking care of you," he said, trying to stay calm. Michael closed his eyes, processing the information. "And now?" he murmured, feeling vulnerable. David, visibly emotional, replied, "Now, we focus on your recovery. We're here for you." The following days were tough. Michael underwent a series of tests and started a rigorous treatment. The doctors explained that he would need to take controlled medications for the rest of his life to manage the condition. "It's a big adjustment, but it's necessary for your health," said the cardiologist seriously. Michael listened in silence, feeling the weight of the situation. "I never thought I'd have to deal with something like this," he confessed to Ryan, who was by his side. "No one is prepared for these things," Ryan replied empathetically. "But you're strong. You'll get through this." During his hospital stay, Ryan and David were always present. "We're in this together," David kept saying, trying to cheer up his brother. Michael, though grateful, struggled with feelings of fear and uncertainty. "What if I don't get better?" he asked one day, tears in his eyes. Ryan, trying to comfort him, replied, "One step at a time. We're here to help you through every moment." The constant presence of Ryan and David gave Michael the strength he needed to face the challenges. Finally, after a week in the hospital, Michael was discharged. He knew that recovery would be a long process and that his life would have to change drastically. "I'll need help adjusting," he admitted as he said goodbye to the doctors. Ryan smiled and replied, "Whenever you need, we'll be here." David, agreeing, added, "We'll face this together as a family." Michael, despite the challenges ahead, felt less alone. Back in his apartment, Michael began to adapt his life to the new reality. Medical appointments became frequent, and medications became a constant part of his routine. "It's hard, but I'll manage," he told himself in a moment of introspection. The experience in the hospital had changed his perspective, and he was determined to take better care of himself. With the unwavering support of Ryan and David, Michael began to envision a future, though still uncertain, with more hope and determination. After the health crisis, Michael returned to work at the motorcycle repair shop with a new perspective on life. He knew he needed to take better care of himself and maintain a healthy lifestyle. "I'm happy to be back," he said to his boss, who welcomed him with a warm smile. "We're happy to have you back too," replied the boss, giving him a friendly pat on the back. Michael felt welcomed, which gave him a sense of normalcy and comfort. While adjusting a motorcycle, Michael started talking with the shop owner, Mr. Ferreira. During one of these conversations, Michael discovered something surprising. "I've had my problems too," Mr. Ferreira confessed, revealing his past as a former drug addict. Michael was surprised. "Really? I never would have guessed," he said with curiosity. Mr. Ferreira nodded and continued, "Yes, but I managed to recover, and now I spend my free time helping others at a rehab center." Intrigued, Michael asked more about the volunteer work. "I help people find a path to recovery, giving them a second chance, just like I was given," explained Mr. Ferreira. Michael was impressed with the man's dedication and began to reflect on how he could help others. "That's incredible. It must be very rewarding," he commented, looking thoughtful. Mr. Ferreira smiled. "It is, and you can make a difference too if you want," he suggested. The idea of contributing something positive began to take shape in Michael's mind. He decided to visit the rehab center with Mr. Ferreira. "I want to see what it's like," he said, excited. On the first visit, Michael was impressed with the work being done there. He saw people facing battles similar to those he had overcome and felt a growing desire to help. "I know what it's like to hit rock bottom," he thought. "Maybe I can do something for them." Enthralled by the experience, Michael decided to volunteer regularly. "I want to help in any way I can," he told Mr. Ferreira. The opportunity to share his story and offer support to others was something he had never considered before. But now it felt like the right path. "You'll do great," Mr. Ferreira encouraged. Michael began getting involved in the activities at the rehab center, helping with daily tasks, and, most importantly, listening to and supporting the residents. Over time, Michael discovered that helping others was also helping himself. Every story he heard, every word of encouragement he offered, seemed to heal a part of his own wounds. "It's like I'm giving back a little of what I received," he reflected during a conversation with Ryan. Ryan, always proud, replied, "You're making a big difference, Michael, and this is just the beginning." Michael smiled, feeling a new energy and purpose in his life. Gradually, Michael became an important figure at the rehab center. The residents began to see him as an inspiration, someone who had gone through the same struggles and managed to rise above them. "You're proof that it's possible," one of the residents said, moved. Michael felt touched. "I'm still on my journey, but if I can do it, so can you," he replied sincerely. This sense of community and mutual support reinforced his determination. Thus, a new phase began in Michael's life. He continued to work at the shop, but now he also dedicated part of his time to helping others. "Finding a purpose is what we all need," he said to David during a family dinner. David, proud, nodded. "You found yours," he replied with a smile. Ryan, always observant, added, "And we're here to support you every step of the way." Michael felt blessed to have these people in his life, people who believed in him and encouraged him to keep growing. Michael knew that the road ahead would still have challenges, but he was stronger and more determined than ever. With the support of Ryan, David, and the new community he had found at the rehab center, he felt he could face anything. "It's a new hope," he thought as he looked to the future. And so, with a heart full of gratitude and purpose, Michael moved forward, ready to continue his recovery journey and help others find their own path.